Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So there was this thing that happened last night that apparently a bunch of people were watching. I was not. It was the Republican presidential debate. The first one, actually, it was the second Republican presidential debate. I'll explain in a second. But it had 10 people that are all seeking the Republican nomination for president. The reason I say it was the second debate is they had what they called the kids' table. The people that were not in the top 10 of the polls that had a debate at something like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the main event, if you will, happened, I think it was at like 9. I was not watching for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, I was working. I was producing Free Talk Live last night. And reason number two is I have absolutely no use for the Republican Party. I also have no use for the Democratic Party. So just so everybody is clear there, like I think that both parties are completely corrupt all the way down to the core. And there's no, saving America through either of those parties. And I actually have no interest in saving America at all, unless, you consider that America is just, a large landmass. And, okay, yeah, let's keep that around for, whatever world we leave Keith Richards. But, the country, the United States of America, the government of the United States of America, I just wish would go away. I want it to absolutely just dissolve, and then hopefully freedom and prosperity can grow in its place, and the cesspool that we know as the District of Criminals will go back to being a swamp like it was before the Capitol was placed there in 1801. So that being said, I did watch a couple of highlights, and that's probably all I'm going to do for any of these debates is just, watch some of the highlights. And one thing that I will say, based on what limited stuff I saw, I'm not going to say that Donald Trump impressed me, but I will say that he is probably the most honest of all of the people that's running in the Republican Party. Now, I don't agree with him on probably very much, but I say he is honest is there was a question that was asked where the moderator said, raise your hand if you are not willing to say right now that you will endorse whoever the nominee winds up being, and raise your hand if you also are not going to say that you will rule out running outside of the Republican Party. Donald Trump raised his hand, and the moderator said, let me re-ask and make sure you know what you're agreeing to. And Donald Trump said, yeah, I know what I'm agreeing to. And he then went on to say that he would only endorse a candidate if he respected that person and agreed with them. That's why I say Donald Trump is probably the most honest, because everybody else up there is basically saying, I don't care who the nominee is, I will support that person. Which leads me to ask the question, if you're willing to endorse whoever the nominee is, then why are you actually running? If you don't think that you're the best person and you would have to earn or that person would have to earn your endorsement, then why are you running? If you're willing to say, I'll endorse whoever it is, drop out of the race. And that goes not just for the Republicans, not just for the Democrats, but also for the Libertarians, the Green Party, the Constitution Party, and everybody else. If you're willing to say, I will blindly support whomever the nominee of my party is, and you're running, then just drop out and endorse whoever it's going to be, because there's really no reason for you to run unless you're going to be honest. And it seems as though Bernie Sanders is the most honest of the Democrats that are running for president, and Donald Trump is the most honest of the Republicans. So let me now get away from debate talk and get into the story that came from Cato. Apparently, there was recently a conservative versus libertarian debate that was co-sponsored, co-hosted, if you will, by the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation. And they did some polling after this debate. The debate apparently happened on July 23rd, but they did not release the full results of the poll until a couple of days ago. So the story here comes from Cato, and they write, the Cato Institute and Heritage Foundation recently co-hosted a debate in which interns from both organizations debated whether conservatism or libertarianism is the better philosophy. At the conclusion of the debate, the Cato Institute conducted a survey of debate attendees, finding important similarities and striking differences between millennial conservatives and millennial libertarian attendees. The survey finds that libertarian and conservative millennials were similar in criticism of government economic intervention and regulation, but were dramatically different in their stances towards immigration, LGBT inclusion, national security, privacy, foreign policy, and perception of racial bias in the criminal justice system. So basically, they found out what anybody with half a brain can tell you, is that libertarians and conservatives agree on economic issues, but they disagree on social issues. And it seems strange to me that you really need a survey to break this down, but some of the answers that were given, or rather some of the questions, the strike difference, or striking difference, is very apparent, and you really need to look at this to realize that libertarianism is something other than republicanism for people that like weed. And that is a stigma and a stereotype that I absolutely despise, because, as I previously said, I have no use for the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Now, I will say that in the early years of my libertarianism, I thought that the Republicans were less bad, if you will. So even though I was a libertarian, I thought, well, maybe the Republicans aren't going to be as bad. Now, I can say that I never voted for George Bush, although I did think that, well, maybe he won't be as bad as Al Gore, and, well, the world will never know, as they say. But let's get into the results of the survey when we get back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, ExpressCoin, and Amazon, at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Now, before I jump into the results of the survey from the Cato Institute's Libertarian versus Conservative Post-Debate Survey, I want to make sure that I tell you about Liberty.me. Liberty.me, it's like a social network, but it is so much more. So there's the social network aspect, there's also forums, there's chat rooms, there's a publishing side, there's the Liberty.me studio where you can download some podcasts. There's also free ebooks that can be downloaded, and like I said, so much more. And one thing that Liberty.me does not have that most other social networks have is internet trolls. And that's because at Liberty.me you have to pay for the service. The website is the product. With the free sites, you are the product, and you're just using something else so that the advertisers can get to you because you're the product. That's not so with Liberty.me. And with referral code FPP Radio, you can save 10% when you sign up at Liberty.me. So that's Liberty.me, referral code FPP Radio. So the story here from Cato continues. It says, while the survey is not a representative sample, it does offer a snapshot of engaged conservative and libertarian millennial elites who have higher levels of education and political information and who chose to come to the event. To date, little information exists on young conservative and libertarian elites. Since these attendees are politically engaged millennials, their responses may provide some indication of the direction they may take both movements in the future. 80% of millennial respondents self-identified as either conservative or libertarian, 41% for conservative, 39% for libertarian. This poll will focus on these conservative and libertarian millennial attendees. Libertarian and conservative millennial attendees were clearly similar on questions related to government intervention in the economy. Both libertarians and conservatives overwhelmingly endorse the idea that the free market can better solve problems than government, 98% and 95% respectively. That government regulation of business too often does more harm than good. 100% of libertarians agreed, 93% of conservatives agreed. And also at 85 and 97% respectively, libertarians and conservatives believe that people who work hard can get ahead. Furthermore, 96 to 98% of both groups preferred a smaller government that offered fewer services and lower taxes over a larger government that offered more services with higher taxes. While national polls find that 6 out of 10 Americans favor raising taxes on households making over $250,000 a year, including 30% of Republicans, fully 9 in 10 libertarian and conservative millennial attendees opposed such actions. Both groups also solidly favored free trade, although a portion of conservatives were less enthusiastic about global competition. For instance, majorities of both groups agreed the country should eliminate all barriers to trade. 100% of libertarians agreed, compared to only 66% of conservatives. Besides economic policies, these young attendees revealed important differences on most other important policy issues. While both libertarian and conservative millennial attendees favored smaller government, they split on cutting defense spending. Surprise, surprise, right? Fully 96% of libertarians supported cutting defense spending, compared with only 32% of conservative millennial attendees. The disagreement over defense spending maps onto disparate visions about what role the U.S. military should have in the world. While 93% of libertarian millennials wanted to decrease U.S. military presence worldwide, only 19% of conservatives agreed. Instead, 44% of conservative attendees thought the United States ought to increase its global military presence, and 37% want to keep it at present levels. Again, 93% of the libertarian millennials, that's people under the age of like 25, I think it is. I can pull that up in the actual survey where the results, and I'll post the link to both of these in the show notes, but the results where they show every question and the response to all of the questions, it's 11 pages long. And like the last page and a half, I believe, are the demographics of asking the age of people and a couple affiliation-related stuff. So the age group, millennial, is actually anybody below the age of 35, which seems kind of strange to me because I don't consider people in their 30s to be millennials. I consider the people that were born sometime, I don't know, around the millennium to be millennials. So, like people born like 1995 to like the early aughts, I would consider to be millennials. But apparently, at least the people over at Cato consider millennial to be anybody up to 35 years old. Again, that just seems rather strange to me. But again, it's shocking that 44% of conservatives that claim to support smaller government, right? Like that's what conservatives claim to support. But 44% of them want to actually increase their preferred welfare program, the U.S. military. Similarly, 85% of conservative millennial elites favored sending ground troops to participate in a campaign against the Islamic State, while 74% of libertarian millennial elites opposed this action. However, these positions were not rock solid. 51% of conservatives said they somewhat supported sending ground troops, and 37% of libertarians somewhat opposed doing so. Now, here's one of the questions. We're coming up on one of the questions that I saw where I just saw the image of this bar graph, and it shocked me. Not so much because of what the conservatives believe, but because the libertarian answer was not 100%. And I'm having to ask myself, who the hell are these 9% of libertarians that answered Edward Snowden is a traitor? The paragraph here that they have at Cato says both conservative and libertarian attendees tended to disapprove of government collection of telephone and internet data as part of its anti-terrorism efforts, but libertarian millennials opposed much more fervently than did their conservative peers. 45% of young conservative elites favored domestic surveillance to fight terrorism, compared to 2% of libertarians. And I'll tell you how Edward Snowden fits in when we come back.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Despite shared opposition to government domestic surveillance, again, the conservatives barely oppose domestic surveillance. 96% of libertarians oppose domestic surveillance and domestic collection of telephone and internet data as part of anti-terrorism efforts. Only 51% of the self-described conservative millennials are also opposed to collection of telephone and internet data as part of anti-terrorism efforts. But even though a slight majority of conservatives and a vast majority of libertarians oppose government domestic surveillance, both groups were diametrically opposed in their evaluation of Edward Snowden, the former government contractor who leaked classified information about the programs to the media. Fully 9 in 10, and that's not entirely accurate because it was 89%, so that's 8.9 out of 10 libertarians, said Edward Snowden is a patriot, while 8 in 10 conservatives, actually just over 8.3 in 10 conservatives, 83% of conservatives said that Edward Snowden is a traitor, and 9%, and this baffles me, who the hell are these 9% of self-described libertarians that say that Edward Snowden is a traitor? Either they don't understand what the word traitor means, or they don't understand what libertarian means. Conservatives and libertarians made the trade-off between freedom and security differently, explaining some of the results, while 80% of conservative millennials said that they would give up some personal freedom and privacy for the sake of national security. 76% of libertarian attendees would not. And again, who the hell are these people that claim to be libertarians who are saying that they would give up some of their personal freedom for a little bit of national security? To paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, if you're willing to give up freedom and privacy for national security, you will neither get nor do you deserve either. So I'm baffled by some of these results, not so much in the fact that, Republican conservatives and the libertarians don't agree, but the fact that some of the libertarians understand what it is that they claim to support. Because, again, if you claim that you support libertarianism, you cannot in any way say that you will give up some of your freedom and privacy for a little bit of security, because that's absolutely not libertarian at all. Libertarianism is essentially the belief that no person has more rights than any other person, and that everything shall be legal as long as you cause no unjust harm to another person. And what exactly does that mean? Well, it means that you can't give away rights that you don't have. So I don't have the right to legitimately take property that is not mine, but yet groups calling themselves government claim such a right. Well, no one can give them that right because no one has that right, but yet conservatives believe that, well, they do have that right because government. And liberals believe that, groups calling themselves government have the right to take someone's property because government. Even though they all will admit that I do not have the right to take property that I do not own, they believe that groups called government do have that right because somehow that group gained magical powers by calling itself government. And people who are saying that they would give up some liberty and privacy for security while also claiming to be libertarian do not understand what it means to be libertarian. The 9% of self-described libertarians, and I'm guessing that there's a lot of overlap between that 9% and this 24%, the 9% who say that Edward Snowden is a traitor, I think, honestly, they do not understand what libertarian means. According to criminal justice reform, division over perceived, or rather, accord on criminal justice reform and division over perceived systemic racial bias is the next area where there is disagreement. The article here continues. It says both conservative and libertarian millennial elites tended to support criminal justice reform. However, libertarian millennial attendees tended to be more sympathetic to charges of racial bias in the criminal justice system. Majorities of both groups favored eliminating mandatory minimum prison sentences for people convicted of possessing or selling drugs. However, libertarians were more in favor, 87%, than conservatives, 54%. In fact, fully 76% of libertarians strongly favor eliminating mandatory minimums compared to 22% of conservative attendees. Majorities of both groups also agreed that local police department using drones, military weapons, and armored vehicles is not necessary for law enforcement purposes, but rather is going too far. Yet libertarians were far more likely than conservatives to oppose militarization of the police, 96 to 56%. Striking differences emerged between libertarian and conservative attendees in the perception of racial bias in the criminal justice system. 68% of conservatives thought that minorities receive equal treatment under the law. In contrast, 85% of libertarians felt that minorities do not receive equal treatment compared to Caucasians in the criminal justice system. Similarly, 85% of libertarians felt that police in most communities are more likely to use deadly force against a minority. However, conservative attendees disagreed, and 64% said that race does not affect police use of deadly force. And that just does not really fit with reality, especially when you look at the connections that some of the people have. Like I've read stories on news reports of a judge's son gets arrested for cannabis possession and all charges dropped and nothing happens, but yet a young minority man has some small amount of cannabis on him. He winds up getting a lengthy prison sentence unless he winds up getting beaten and killed by the police. And yes, I realize Zachary Hammond the young teen from South Carolina allegedly had 10 grams of cannabis on him, and he wound up getting shot by police. And the police report did not actually mention that the police fired their weapons, which is absolutely ludicrous. But race does play a factor, and I would actually say that it's more socioeconomic than just skin color. There's more here. I'll post the link in the show notes. Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.